We're going to get some answers right now from Ambassador Andrew Young.
Okay,
I think we've worked out all the kinks. Ambassador, are you there? I think he can hear us now.
Oh, wonderful.
And we have Brenda Wood here as well.
Yes, it's good to see you again, Ambassador, as always. Thank you so much for agreeing to spend some time with us here talking about this great humanitarian. I know that you have a long history with Jimmy Carter. And as I said earlier, I have to ask you about your first impressions of him. Some time ago, you knew nothing about this person named Jimmy Carter. So, what was your first experience with him?
Well, my first experience was not very good because I bumped into him at Pascal's restaurant. And I'd been hearing about him. He had just started his campaign for governor. And I was running for Congress. And I tried to shake hands with him and introduce myself, and he said, "Just a minute, I need to go to the kitchen first." And so he sort of brushed me off because he was on the way to the kitchen. And I wasn't insulted, I was impressed.
Yes.
Because he kind of knew who I was. I guess I was known as a candidate running for Congress, and the first time in 100 years somebody black was running for Congress in Georgia. And but it impressed me that he felt that the votes in the kitchen were just as important as mine.
And it's very
I never forgot that.
Very interesting because he lived his life that way.
I always, whenever I went to a restaurant or someplace to campaign for voters, I always went to the kitchen.
Yes, so he was a model for even you. I want you to tell us, though, about the time that you encountered Jimmy Carter shortly after your experience and other civil rights activists' experience with the sheriff of Sumter County, which is the county of Plains, Georgia. Yes, tell us about that.
The first thing he asked me was, he said, I said, "You're from Sumter County." I said, "The only person I know in Sumter County is Sheriff Chappell." And he said, "Oh yeah, he's a good friend of mine." Well, when Martin Luther King was in jail in Albany, they didn't put him in jail in Albany, they put him in Americus, which is Sumter County Prison. And it was a hot day that turned really cold at night. And when we went to the jail to try to bring some blankets, Sheriff Chappell said that you should have thought about that before you broke the law. And instead of letting us give Dr. King and others blankets, he turned the air conditioning on and pulled the cold air in. Wow. And that was the basis for a judgment that Martin said, Sheriff Chappell must be the meanest man in the world. And so that was my first contact. But it was, that too wasn't bad, because he was not ashamed of his racist friends, but he was equally as open to me. And I later met his mother that same day, and his son, Chip. And both of them were really brilliant, charming people. Miss Lillian had been to India in the Peace Corps when she was 66 years old. And she was a kind of a firebrand liberal, in the best sense of that word. She was the nurse for everybody in Sumter County, and she treated everybody, every baby that she delivered, that means black and white, like they were her children. And she kept up with them. She knew them by name, and she encouraged them to drop by to see her. And then my wife had a similar experience with Miss Lillian, and we realized that this was a great family. The same day I heard that his grandfather was an old Southern populist who was a very good friend of the Methodist AME bishop. And that one of the things they did that Jimmy Carter did as a boy, when his grandfather went to see the bishop or vice versa, he would go along and they would sing hymns on the porch and read the Bible together. And so this was anything but the typical family that I was expecting to try to find and understand.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to get over my own prejudices, but it was something that he had been working on all of his life, and it was something that he had decided that God made of one blood all the nations of the earth, and that his black friends were as important as his white friends.
He lived by that creed. I know, as UN ambassador in his administration, Jimmy Carter was your boss. So, what was the dynamic between you and him when you were appointed to that role? What did you set in your heart and your mind to do to continue the Carter regime and to highlight his accomplishments? Like, was he a good boss? Did he ever scold you about anything? What was he like? What was it like to work for him?
I tell you, he was too good a boss because he encouraged me to follow my conscience, which was not far from his conscience. And I was in an awkward position because I was appointed by him and I was a member of the cabinet, but the State Department essentially controlled most of the foreign policy. And the State Department then was still filled with many people who were from Kissinger's background. And that is, they were concerned about Europe and China, well, not quite China yet, but they had almost no interest in Africa and the Caribbean and the colored peoples of the world. Whereas the first thing that Jimmy Carter said to me was, as he swore me in the White House, he wrote a note on the back of a piece of paper saying, I want you to go to Africa immediately and see as many visitors, get to see as many African leaders as possible, and ask them what they expect of this administration and how we might help them. Now that was a blank check. But when I took it back to the State Department, they said, well, we're not ready to do that yet. And we don't have a plane. And so I deferred to them and called Jimmy Carter back, and he said, oh no, we have plenty of planes here in the White House. You decide when you need to go, when you can go, and we'll have a plane ready for you. And so I was always in the middle, but I didn't mind that. And but it lasted just about 3 years.
When it comes to national politics, Jimmy Carter's political career kind of reflects sort of the evolution of politics in the South in particular. And so, in looking over the history of the upheaval and the advancement of civil rights, the 60s, the 70s, and 80s, the transformation of the South in particular, again, I see Jimmy Carter as sort of being a bridge between the old South and the new South of politics. How do you see him?
Oh, there's no question that he was more than a bridge. He opened the door to the South. And when he was sworn in as governor of Georgia, in his inaugural address, the first sentence he said was that we must all realize that racial discrimination and segregation is dead in Georgia. and that was a shock. But that was something one of his supporters, who had worked with him from the very beginning, had promised him he would say when he was sworn in. And so he was representing much of the New South, but he still had many of the positive things about the Old South. I mean, he was not a card-carrying liberal on anything, but he was way out in front on things like, I remember a young man in our church took a job with the Peace Corps, and he was assigned to Philadelphia, and he was putting up solar panels on the top of slum houses. And the Carter administration had arranged to use those houses to generate electricity. They had windmills and solar panels. And the energy that poor folk drew from the sun and the wind went into their credit, and they received rebates from the electric generators. I mean, the electric company.
Jimmy Carter, in fact, had solar panels put on the White House. He was progressive in many ways. He sort of furthered the energy policies and put in some very progressive ideas in the energy legislation that his administration
he ran as a public.
Did. Yes.
Public image was that of a peanut farmer, which is true. But he wasn't actually just a peanut farmer. He was a peanut scientist. He developed new forms of peanuts that would grow faster and bring more money. And he sold those seeds. And we tend to forget that while he was a peanut farmer, he was also the deputy to Admiral Rickover in the Naval Academy. And he was one of the top people in helping the United States to develop a nuclear navy. And he carried these seeming contradictions very well. He was, well, as Dr. King said, greatness is defined by antipathies strongly marked. A great man has to have a tough mind and a tender heart. And I can't think of anybody that better signifies that than James Earl Carter, the 39th President of the United States.
So true, so true. You know, his presidency is remembered as, putting it mildly, troubled, not necessarily considered.
I don't think it was.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, what's your thought? How would you describe it?
My feeling is that he went out of his way to seek troubles. And he saw the troubles not just as they were happening right now, but he saw that we could not deal with the problems of Latin America, and we couldn't deal with the problems of trade until we worked out an agreement with Panama. And so the first thing he said to me before he was even sworn in, Rosalynn had gone to Mexico to the swearing in of, I think it was President Lopez Portillo. And she came back saying that all of the Caribbean presidents that she met, all of them wanted us to spend more time with the Caribbean. And she suggested to President Carter that he send me back to do the same kind of trip that she did. That is, hitting 11, I think it was 11 Caribbean countries. Well, starting with Mexico and going down to My geography is messed up, but
It's okay.
Costa Rica, and then hitting Venezuela, and you know, and coming on around through Trinidad and Jamaica, and to do the same thing in the Caribbean that he wanted me to do in Africa.
Ambassador, I'm going to rush you along here just a little bit because they're about to open the doors of the Carter Center for citizens to pay their respects to the former president. I want to ask you one.
There, I know.
Yeah, I want to ask you one final question very quickly, and that is, I know you'll be attending the funeral in Washington on Thursday. What will be your lasting thoughts and impressions about James Earl Carter?
Well, I don't have anything but praise, and I think he was an inspiration to me and everybody who took the time to really try to work with him and understand him. And he was as close to a saint as anybody I've ever known.
Well, you are a man, a minister, and you've known many good people, so that's saying a lot. Ambassador Andrew Young, thank you again for taking the time to talk to us and to remember this great man. So appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.